First, many thanks for giving me the next 15 to 18 minutes of your time to talk about getting cybersecurity right and why really a blended approach to modern IT is the right way moving forward. My name is Jonathan Nguyen. I'm a VP and a field CISO at Fortinet. And so my job is to work with folks like yourselves and apply my 25 years in cybersecurity. I started at what was then Bell Atlantic, and I helped build what became Verizon's managed security services line of business. And at the end of 16 years, I departed Verizon as a security CTO, and I ran the data breach investigations report. So I got to manage a tremendous amount of customer security solutions, and the research was spanning some 25,000 data breaches. So I had a really good idea about what works and what doesn't work in cybersecurity. And that was fundamental to my decision to come join Fortinet, about how to get technology aligned to fix some of those structural issues in security. And so today we're going to talk about these 5-step approaches in terms of cybersecurity strategy and how to get it right. And that graphic on the right-hand side really just speaks to just about how complex the operating environment really is today, and going about how do we go about optimizing security and workflows and across highly distributed computing and networks ranging from 4G, LTE through 5G, from MPLS through SD-WAN. And how to do things in a more holistic fashion. And I think that's the key part, is to manage complexity so that you have consistent visibility and control. And finally, we'll summarize about what are the key requirements needed to get cybersecurity right. And so the first part that you should be aware of is these 4 broad themes or macro trends that are really shaping the way we think about cybersecurity today. And so the first part is this notion of enabling work from anywhere. I think coming out of the pandemic now, I know of only one organization actually that's going to go back to the previous work model. Just about every organization, large, medium, small, is going to enable some form of hybrid work model whereby our employees, our customers want to be able to access resources from any location on any device at a time of their choosing. So we begin to see how network and security performance are so key to delivering better business outcomes. And indeed, the digital experience, the second aspect, because so much of what we do moving forward is contactless. And so going out of the pandemic, all of our customers expect to be wowed. We have millennial expectations. We want to be able to interact with the brand and network resources and computing resources with highly responsive networks with great levels of security and privacy. That's the fundamental expectation moving forward. But at the same time, of these new security challenges, we have persistent cybersecurity threats, the ones we knew about, the ones that are emerging now, and that's only accelerating. And then compounding that is that last point, the continual shortage of cybersecurity skill sets and also resources and budgets. So that really points to one reason why I believe that traditional cybersecurity strategies have failed. They've never worked. Why? Because traditional strategy asked us to combine multiple products, dozens of products in some cases, trying to integrate them with not enough resources and not enough staff with different skill sets to actually manage that level of complexity. So first insight is complexity is the fundamental reason why we have failed in cybersecurity. And we'll see about how we go about addressing that. Now, cloud adoption is rapidly expanding across small, medium, and large enterprises. What's key to understand are some pretty interesting points here. The first part is that Gartner expects that as you move into cloud adoption, you should see a reduction in the number of security incidents. Why? It's because someone is actually dedicated to watching that infrastructure, watching that platform, and in some cases, even the software. But at the same time, because of that shared responsibility model and the complexity of trying to manage cloud environments, 95% of all the cloud security failures are the customer's fault. In fact, I think the number one issue right now in cloud security is misconfigured public services. And it speaks to the level of complexity across that. And I think finally, the most damning statistic of all is this one. It's been true for years now, that 99% of all the vulnerabilities that were exploited by the bad actors were known for at least a year, meaning we're not patching or we're failing at patch management, we're failing at configuration. In fact, we're failing at those basic to intermediate security controls. And so when you compound that with some of the persistent issues we've seen, one, lack of visibility, the more complexity we throw in the environment, the greater the challenge it is to understand what's happening there. And that really speaks to breach anxiety. We as operators try to work from the perspective of what we believe to be in the operating environment. The attacker works from the perspective of what is actually there. And the gap between that lack of visibility is typically the breach anxiety. And then finally, I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we will never have enough people with skill sets from beginning, intermediate to advanced to cover all of these bases. And so that's what's driving this notion of consolidation. My old shop at Verizon this past year, released some interesting stats, one of which is now we're seeing more breaches in cloud than we are on-prem. And the number one reason for those breaches in the cloud are misconfigured public services. So that really speaks to those simple intermediate controls. Why are we failing? We're spending billions of dollars, some 350, in fact, on network security. And for all that spending, for all the human effort, we're still failing. So this is a slide I spend some time on with organizations to give an idea of the level of complexity that we're talking about here. So this talks about the evolution of computing from mainframes to PCs and data centers to multi-cloud environments, right? And what we've seen is that computing moves across that dynamics of centralized and distributed computing. Along the way, we've had the evolution of security from hub and spoke networking through SD-WAN and now 5G SD-WAN. And we've moved from point defense products to more and more levels of integration and aggregation, from point defense to platforms to really now security fabrics. And at the same time, that shared responsibility model that we spoke to, that begins to show us just how complex the operating environment is today. So it's a paradox. It's shared responsibility because there's lots of vendors and service providers involved, but limited accountability. We as the operators own that responsibility. So there's no way of getting away from that. So what this really represents is that moving forward, because we're no longer backhauling traffic back to a data center and out to the internet, but indeed, we're accessing cloud resources from a multitude of locations as evidenced on the left-hand side here. And we're using SD-WAN to access those clouds directly from these network edges. And so what this tells you is that SD-WAN is going to be the foundation of all enterprise networking moving forward. And therefore, we really need to think about networking and security as one. And we need to think about that integrated capability on the LAN, WAN, data center, and cloud edge. Second to that is that as computing becomes more distributed, zero trust becomes very important. It is foundational to any strategy going forward. And what it really talks to is ensuring that only the right people and the right users, the right entities, the right things can access the information that they need to do their jobs. So SD-WAN and zero trust becomes foundational moving forward. And that's why when you look at the 5 steps across all these lessons of the 20,000 data breaches I've seen, that's the emergence of the NIST cybersecurity framework, the 5 steps, if you will, in terms of identifying and understanding what's the current state of your environment. Once you've identified it, the ability to protect that and prevent the known knowns, if you will, right? And then third, detection, the ability to detect anomalous behavior, and finally, to respond and recover in an automated and integrated capability. These are the 5 steps. And when you work with a partner like WEI and implementing the Fortinet security fabric, you get that capability, which is the second insight. Cybersecurity is highly complex, right? So therefore, it's a team sport. It is not a DIY exercise. So picking the right partners like WEI and Fortinet becomes clear and key. And so what happens over time is we have too many products, too many management consoles, too much complexity, and it stymies our ability to deliver better business outcomes and experiences. And that's why we're consolidating. Now, you're going to get a copy of all these slides, so I'm moving through a little bit quickly, but what it shows you is that Gartner sees this, and it says the right way of implementing those 5 steps of cybersecurity is through what they call a cybersecurity mesh, what we call a cybersecurity fabric, if you will. And so when you deconstruct the approaches that are needed, this is what I think is needed to get cybersecurity right. The first part is that this fabric is a series of broad technologies that span everything from the home office, the retail office, the connected vehicle, through the traditional enterprise environment, and also the largest clouds in the world today. And we cover everything from IT, OT, we're on school buses and enterprise data centers. We're certified on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. We're in low Earth orbit on the International Space Station. That's what I mean by broad. Integrated in that these technologies are integrated on a common operating system we call FortiOS. So they collect and share information so that we can apply AI and be really predictive and proactive and automating the response. And what you get then is this notion of self-healing networks and a true cybersecurity mesh. This is why the Fortinet security fabric is so unique in the industry. And when you marry that with WEI's capabilities, you begin to see great value. So who are we at Fortinet? So at the end of the day, Fortinet is one of the top 3 pure play cybersecurity companies in the world. We top 3 billion in annual revenue. The market cap today is somewhere around 50 odd billion. You know, when I joined Fortinet 6 years ago, the stock price was $28 a share. The market cap was $6.5 billion. I think today we're north of $320 a share. And for 20 years, we were a no debt, high growth, highly profitable company. That's what I mean by unicorn. We issued our first bond last year, BBB+ rating. So we are a well-known, highly trusted brand. You see the bottom of the 50/40 integrated products. This is the stuff that's jet integrated at an OS level, a common OS level. And why is this unique? Because it means for things like your next generation firewall with SD-WAN at no additional cost, it's built into the product. It's a series of technologies across networking and security on one platform, one appliance, if you will, on one management console that can scale and unify that very distributed computing environment. You know, very quickly, we have over 1,000 patents. I've got one, in fact, and we have more patents in security than any other company in the industry. We are a deeply organically innovative company, a global company, publicly traded, 12,000 employees, over 500,000 customers around the world. You know, we are in the S&P 500. We're the only pure play cybersecurity company in the S&P 500. So we're an established brand, and we look at across 10 billion security events every day. And so my final slide is this one. And so my recommendation to you is this: if you want to get cybersecurity right, starts off with the idea about picking the right trusted advisor, someone who understands your business model, understands your networking, understands the computing, and understands security. That's where WEI and Fortinet really come in. The practical reality is that a multi-cloud computing environment is here to stay. So the challenge is, how do you provide the same consistent visibility and control across your private clouds, public clouds, and your software as a service capabilities? And that attack surface is only going to grow. The notion of work from anywhere, anything as a service, demands that successful companies are the ones who are able to create new and better interactions with their brands, the ability to allow your customers to interact with your brands in new ways at a time of their choosing, at a location of their choosing, literally anything as a service. And then finally, you know, this notion of constrained resources, that's not going away. So the way we go about addressing that is to consolidate onto a more integrated platform that presents that visibility on a single pane of glass. And that's why you need folks like WEI and the Fortinet Security Fabric to make that a reality. I think for me, those are the basic lessons that get you to a point where you can write cybersecurity moving forward. And so with that, I'm going to end my presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Mike and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Jonathan. That was great. So if any questions, please feel free to chime in. I believe everyone should have the ability to unmute or use the chat, whichever you prefer. If not, you know where to find me afterwards. And please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, if no questions,
likewise, yep. You know, the Fortinet team is there. And also I'm on LinkedIn. So everybody wants to reach out, and not a sales call, but just to talk about where we are in security, or just some practical, you know, lessons on how do you implement zero trust. You know, what are the things I need to do to address ransomware? All the things that the leadership team is asking, right? You know, what's the best way to migrate to the cloud? How do I think about things like that? How do I integrate my public and my private cloud, and zero trust, and SD-WAN, and SASE? All of those abbreviations and acronyms. Happy to have those conversations.